Hello everybody, I am Kristen Flume and I am a board member of the Tampa Bay Birth Network. Thank you so much for coming to our expo today. I am also a certified birth doula and a birth photographer. So today we are going to have our wonderful speaker, Melissa Goodnow, and she is going to be speaking about VBAC and kind of give you guys some more information on vaginal birth after cesarean.
Hi, my name is Melissa Goodnow. I am a doula and an ICAN leader. ICAN is International Cesarean Awareness Network. And our mission is to improve the quality of birth by promoting VBAC, trying to prevent unnecessary cesareans from medical interventions, and also provide support for cesarean recovery. We also are resources for people in the community to have, if they so choose to have a cesarean birth or a vaginal birth, if you want to birth in your backyard, if you want to go birth at the top of Mount Everest, we are there to help you find those resources and providers that will help support you through that. One of the things that unfortunately in our society has become a societal norm is that once a cesarean, always a cesarean. And this beautiful myth was birthed by a gentleman named Edwin McCagan. And he read this little excerpt here in 1916. So from 1916 into 2015, we have followed this ideal of general rule. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of things in 1916 that we no longer follow. You know, like, I don't know, lead poisoning, using certain medical instruments that probably killed you in the first place, you know, things of that nature. They also said back in 1916 that there was a 10% chance of vaginal birth after cesarean. This has been something that providers use now as well. Or maybe you've heard the random, you have a 5% chance, or you have an 80% chance of uterine rupture, you are, I don't know, you have a better chance of birthing an elephant than you do to have a VBAC. Unfortunately, that's an outdated source of information. Recent studies have shown that there was over an 80% chance of a successful VBAC. Now, I do not like to use the word successful because birth is not a success or a failure. It is merely a form of your normal variations. But one of the things that people resonate with is whether they have a successful or a cesarean birth. And so that term, while used, is not something I promote. So I just wanted to note that. Now, cesarean sections can be life-saving. The WHO recommends from 1% to a 15% of cesarean birth overall. Commonly, it's misrepresented and misunderstood when reading the literature. When they think 15%, they think that that's our goal. We want 15% of birth to actually be cesarean birth. However, when it's actually interpreted correctly, 15% is the cap. We do not want to exceed. It is not our target. That is the utmost, highest number that we are wishing to gain and not succeed. However, I don't know if any of you know this, but Florida has a 38.94% of cesarean rates at the moment in the state, putting us at number 4 in the country. There are 52 states, and we are 4th in the highest cesarean rates. Doesn't really give us a good name for cesareans, and it shows us how many women are actually having a surgical birth over a vaginal delivery. Now, emergency cesareans, they usually qualify you as an emergency while you're in the situation. Say you go in for birth and you are on the fetal monitors, you have maybe a kind of a a baby distress moment where a baby's heart rate may go up or go down. And all of a sudden they say, oh, your baby's in danger. We need to do an emergency cesarean. And then they come back 2 hours later. That's not necessarily considered an emergency at that point, and if you look at your records, it'll tell you that it's actually an elective. True emergency cesareans are cesareans that happen within minutes. So you have a massive decel, baby's oxygen is definitely being cut off. You are, there's an occurrence where maybe you were starting to hemorrhage, or there's a placental abruption, or there's something that's causing true concern. They're not going to tell you anything. They're going to say, we're going back now. And things that you will note that is a true emergency is that happen within minutes. You will most likely be put under general anesthesia. And your partner and support team most likely will not be allowed to go back with you. Usually outside of that norm, it's labeled elective. Unfortunately, this is where we are gaining our numbers in cesareans and being told by our providers that, oh, they saved our life. We were so close to losing our baby, and now we have the cesarean birth and we're labeled as a cesarean birth. Maybe there was a golf game happening that weekend. I don't know. Some doctors, they're busy. They have huge practices. They have families and lives, and sometimes they fill their plate. It happens. It's human. And they usually they may want a mom to birth sooner, or maybe they're running out of beds. Fear-mongering is something that is helping increase these numbers of cesareans. Which is why it says, why is it necessary? Or was it necessary? Things that create a necessary cesarean are things like a prolapse cord, where baby's cord comes out before baby comes. That can cut off a lot of blood flow and oxygen to the baby, creating a true emergency. Placental abruption, as I mentioned. Fetal malpresentation, meaning baby maybe turn transverse or breech. Breech, unfortunately, is a lost art. I really hope that we can get back to breech birth and know that it is a variation of normal, but there are true necessary reasons for a cesarean birth from a breech presentation. And then there's maternal medical conditions. Herpes lesions, this is something that's actually being contradicted right now, saying that if there are surgical pads that can be covering the lesions and it's not internally, you can still have a vaginal birth. Severe hypertension, such as like extreme preeclampsia, diabetes, if baby's showing having episodes of premier diabetic state, and fetal distress. There are risks to cesareans. You're not always told that right in the beginning. You're told this is a safe option. This is what it needs to happen for you and for your baby. As you can see the list, which I will not divulge into, it's a lot to take in what actually can occur in a cesarean. And these things are some things that will increase if you have subsequent cesareans after that. Your risks such as you have a higher risk of placenta previa or placenta accreta with every additional cesarean that you have. And while they say that it's a safer option for baby's still at risk as well. There's infection that can happen. Baby may withstand an injury from the surgical birth. Breathing difficulties happens a lot, especially with planned cesareans. Dates can be off. Technology is not fail-proof. We may not actually know what your true gestational age is. Baby may be measuring small on the ultrasound, but may, be 41 weeks, or vice versa. You may have a large baby and only be 36 weeks, and so the lungs aren't fully developed, which could lead to NICU stays. They're also showing with research that there are later in life issues that are coming about and affecting the society and our children as a whole. Whoop. I don't know how to go back. Well, I'll find that later. Locally, our hospital C-section rates are as follows. South Florida Baptist in Plant City, which is a little hospital, has the lowest cesarean rates in our local area, in our Tampa Bay area. Our highest is St. Joe's Women's, which is 44.6%. That is almost 1 in 2 women that go in will most likely have a cesarean birth from St. Joe's. This is a problem. This is not a norm, especially being when you look at the numbers as a whole. St. Joe's Women's only caters to a smaller percentage of pregnancies and births than some of the other local hospitals. I don't know about you, but that number scares me. What are we doing wrong? Are we allowing our providers to just tell us what they expect? Are we not going to by educating ourselves? That should be atrocious, and that should be a big red flag. You know, we hear a lot of times that women are birthing at certain hospitals because it's beautiful, because they want their providers, they love their providers. This makes my skin crawl. You can love your partner, you can love your children, you can even love your grocery store and the managers there. But your providers are someone you employ. You should have a mutual respect for those providers. And if they're doing things such as unnecessary major abdominal surgery to you because they just, who knows? There's not a mutual love there. You're a number. You are a dollar sign. And that's what we're trying to overcome, especially in our area. Now, our primary cesarean VBAC rates, this is, we're waiting for newer data, so this is the most recent that has come out for this specific. You can see how things have kind of changed, but primary cesarean rates kind of stayed in the mutual area of the same general rates. Now, the VBAC rate, kind of the same as well, but the total number of births is what's changed. In 2005, total number of births reported were 31%. In 2012, 86%. Why is that primary and cesarean rate the same? Why has it not changed? Why has it not gone down? Because our cesarean rates have gone up. It kind of levels itself out. So whether you're pregnant or thinking about becoming pregnant, there are 3 main aspects to kind of set your entire pregnancy around, or even before. Prevention, education, and support. Those 3 key elements is going to help you maintain a large community to help achieve whatever birth desire you may have. Now, birth is unpredictable. We may not ever know, because your vagina does not have a crystal ball, whether or not that baby's going to come out vaginally or by cesarean. That's why we have the technology and the medical advances that we do. We just need not to abuse it. And by setting these things up, you can help lower your chances for that. During your pregnancy, focus on yourself. Eat healthy. You know, don't go through McDonald's drive-thru every day. I mean, I know their iced tea is banging, but it's a little much. My crutch, my first daughter, was Dunkin' Donuts chocolate glaze. And so I had to really learn that about myself the next time around. I had to get a little bit better. Focus on daily exercise. Things such as Spinning Babies had the website. Has anybody heard of Spinning Babies? Fantastic. Oh, yes. Spinning Babies is a remarkable resource to where you can go and learn daily exercises without even a professional being assisting with you. These are things that you can do on the daily from the moment you find out you're pregnant, or prior to. Because as you build stamina, you build strength. Now, there are times where you may not be aware and you start at 39 weeks. Hey, hallelujah, you got to it. but it makes things a little bit more difficult. So early in the pregnancy is key. Creating a trust with your provider, having the conversation early on. Whether or not you're trying to have a vaginal birth or a VBAC or a cesarean birth because of whatever medical conditions that may arise, that trust and that mutual understanding of your provider is important, because if your provider just thinks of you as just another person that will do whatever they feel is necessary, then they're not going to stand in your background as much as you would hope for them to be. And knowing that your provider, if you have a practice of 10 other, the one that you set a good standing with may not be the one at your birth. So it's important to find practices that you are comfortable with. It may have a smaller number of, whether it be OBs or midwives, so that you have that close connection and you feel supported throughout the entire. And nurturing yourself. You know, enjoying the last moments of pregnancy, enjoy being pregnant, enjoy really connecting with your family, with your loved ones, building support in your community early on. That will set you up for success no matter what your birth entails. Education. Read birth and pregnancy books, and I am not talking about what to expect when expecting. That book, again, outdated information that we are still grasping onto. You know, some better options would be Ina May, anything from Ina May. Kenzie Gower, you know, reading Born in the USA, not pregnant. There are some books to stay away from in pregnancy, but other books while you're preparing, and you know, just really knowing that there's other options out there for educational purposes, and not just what you find in the Target aisles. Take independent childbirth classes. If you're birthing at a hospital, they're going to tell you what they want you to know. Taking an outside childbirth education class will help you get a wider perspective on what's available. Knowing different positions, knowing what community resources are, knowing what to do in the event if you're having a home birth, what a transfer will entail, how to handle a transfer, how to handle and set up a cesarean birth plan, how to set up a birth plan, how to communicate with your providers, I mean the whole nine. In a hospital setting, mostly you get from feedback. So this is the day that you come to your epidural class. This is the day that you set up for this. You know, it's laid out for you, and it's almost just as a like a conveyor belt. You're just moving through the line, and they're just CYA in their childbirth classes, saying that they give you the full informed consent, but they're not giving you the whole picture. And then learn about optimal fetal positioning. Who here has had a cesarean birth? Who here has had a cesarean birth for malposition? Baby was posterior, baby was transverse, breech, facing the sky. This is one of our biggest factors for cesarean births. We have become such a comfortable society that when we go home after a long day of sitting in an office chair or sitting and driving in the car, maybe we have a traveling job, that we're just going to lounge on our couches. Or we're just going to lay and be just chilled out, vegetative state. Because we live busy lives in America, we really do. But we live busy lives in a way that it needs to, we need to refocus that. So if you have an office, bring in your birth ball. Bounce on that sucker like there's no tomorrow. It helps create an open pelvis so baby can align. Yeah, preach it, baby. Following spinning babies helps to open and keep pelvis to where pelvis and uterus align so that baby can stay optimal. Going to the chiropractor, we forget, again, nurturing ourselves, that our bodies are creating a human life. We need to make sure that we're allowing for all things to be open and to be released, like our ligaments. Our ligaments may be too tight, causing restriction and baby to go in a malpositioned way. Who likes likes to sit back in their couch and just put their feet up? Where does that put your belly and your pelvis? Kind of back, tipped back? Now, I will demonstrate this. So think of it this way. Where does baby get to go? Nowhere? So it's going to find a comfortable spot. And that's usually going to be posterior. Posterior babies, while they do come out, you have a higher chance of a cesarean rate because baby may be in just a wonky position that we can't get out of the uterus. Finding that center and following optimal fetal positioning is going to help that. What I like to tell people is, think of your belly button, and I learned this from Gail, who is the originator of spinning babies. Think of your belly button as a flashlight. Where does your flashlight aim to? If it aims to the sky, reposition. You want it leveled out or down. Your couch is your worst best friend when you're pregnant. As soon as you get that pregnancy test, get off your couch. Sit on the floor, sit on a birth ball, sit on a table, anything that's going to sit you upright or leaning a little bit further is going to be a better positioning for you. To choose your home, you have the ability to choose a hospital. You can choose a local hotel. You can choose certain parts of the beach. You can choose to go across the country. You have the choice to birth your baby wherever you want. The only exception in Florida is that you cannot birth your baby in a birth center, but you can extend out from the center with those same midwives, like Jessica, because they offer home birth services. That's the only outlying difference. So things to look for when choosing a care provider is don't just pick the very first one you have. Or if you think you had a great experience, but some red flags are going up from a previous provider, you may want to shop around. I know for me, when I was looking for my car, it took us a year to agree on something. Now, how many people spend that much time looking for a provider? We spend more time trying to plan for our weddings and for our anniversaries and children's dance recital than we do for our own births. Now, some of us may get married more than once, but that baby is only coming out one time. I mean, we all try to put it back after a while. So knowing that you spend that much time, it kind of puts in perspective where we're lacking as a society. Hello, I'm still here. There we go. So things to look for when you're finding a provider is, what are their rates for vaginal births? What are the rates for cesarean births? Are they trustworthy? Talk to your friends. Talk to people in the community. Put out a search. Google. You have no idea what comes up with Google. I mean, quite honestly, there are some things I was like, wow. I didn't know that you could bake bread at 10 degrees on the top of wherever. Like, you learn things you never learned before. We are in an age of technology. Utilize it. Minimal intervention use and practices the midwifery model of care. This is important. An OB can still practice this version of care. It's not, it's something that has become a societal outcast in medical practice. But we're slowly moving back towards this because we've noticed our rates for intervention and cesarean are way too high. Practicing the midwifery model of care can help reduce that. And know that you have options. You can change your provider as long as your baby doesn't come out. 39 weeks, I had a mom change providers at 41 weeks. Doctor was talking about, oh, I'm sorry, you're 41 weeks, you're advanced maternal age, this baby's not coming out, let's schedule your induction. And this mom was like, whoa. Schedule my induction, I've already had one birth prior. Everything looks good, why do we need to do this? Come come to find out her provider was leaving later that night. Not always the case, but there may always be a little bit something that we're not aware of. We're not in our providers' lives. And that's not to say that it's just OBs either. There are midwives the same route. It's a busy practice. It's a busy birth world. And we always have to take care of ourselves, so we are in charge of that. We are in charge of knowing when to question what's being told to us. So if you are a VBAC, it's important to know, it is imperative to know whether your provider is just tolerant or is truly friendly. This list went around last year on Facebook and it went pretty viral, and I think it's the best reference that there is right now. That is on one page. When you're being told, oh, you have to go into labor by 40 or 41 weeks, that's on your consent form. That right there should be a red flag. When you are told baby must be under X pounds, oh my goodness, I want to slap somebody when they say this. Macrosomia, or big baby, is not a reason for induction or cesarean birth. Uses a VBAC calculator. Has anybody heard of the VBAC calculator? You will. If you go for a consultation, this little nifty tool will come out. This is a tool where it inputs your data, not as a person, not as anything else, but what your records show, and computes a guesstimation of what your success in a vaginal delivery will ensue. This is a load of crock. It is not evidence-based. It is an easy access tool, and it's something to kind of gauge. However, I'll give you my personal example. I went in for my consult for my home birth, and I went in knowing what I was expecting for the most part, but I was still thrown off by this. They put in my little data. My baby was posterior, my prior. I dilated fully. My baby was stuck. I should not have a baby over 8 pounds. I had CPD, which is cephalic proportion dysfunction. And I was overweight. Goodness, the list just continues. They gave me a 43% chance of vaginal delivery. I laughed. I was like, well, that's an interesting little thing to know. Thank you very much. I went on to have a 4.5-hour labor and birth in my bedroom 6 months later. It's not something that can determine. No one has a crystal ball for your vagina. No one will know what your baby will do. Your previous birth, because you don't have a proven pelvis, I was going to proven vagina, well, we all know your vagina works. You don't have a proven pelvis from a previous birth, that's not an indicator. Different baby, different birth, different experience. There are a small number of women that actually have true CPD. It's not the norm. Cesarean birth would be a great option for that. But I digress. So everyone wants to be at your birth. Have you when you told your parents or your family, and they were like, "Oh, are you gonna come? Are you gonna call me? You have to call me. You have to call." What do you mean you're not gonna tell me? I'm going to be there. No. Hire a doula. A doula is there to help you. She or he is there to support you throughout your journey. There's that quote saying a doula is worth a mullah, and I totally, legitimately agree with this. Because there may be things that they know that they can help you along the ways with that may not ever have crossed your mind before. Connect with women in your area for support. ICAN is a great support system. We have over 600 women that are local, that have either had experience similar to your own, or have never had a baby but are in the birth work, or just there as empowering factors, wants to be there for you. Setting up your community prior will help you kind of guide through everything else. And choose carefully who you invite to your birth. It is not a spectator sport. Think of it this way. For every additional person that you have either waiting, and you know because women were hostesses by nature, or is in the room with you, add an hour to your labor. Who wants that? I was like, yeah, I want to have a 36-hour labor. Let's do this. No. You have these feelings. Women are known to birth in the wilds alone, secluded, with like their one or two people, their team, their support persons. But as a whole, we're not meant to be on screen. Like this whole, what is on TLC? Is it TLC? I don't know. The wild birthing or baby story or whatever. No wonder why there's so many interventions. There's an entire camera crew in the room with you. That would shut anybody's sphincter down. Like, I mean, quite truthfully. That's why when we hear women aren't progressing, well, how many times have we been checked in on? Or how many people have walked into our hospital room or into our home and was like, hey, how's it going? Let me get my fingers up there. You know, it's a matter of protecting your space. And you have the right to say, sorry, Mom, Dad, I'm not gonna Skype you. If you wanna know the baby, we'll call you after the baby's born. Allow that for yourself. It's a sacred space. It is your birth. During labor, now there are needs for medical interventions. That's why they are called medical interventions. For the whole, though, we want to avoid Pitocin for a low-risk woman. For avoiding an epidural, it can cause other issues along the lines. Pitocin can spike fevers, epidurals can spike fevers. Pitocin can cause distress in the baby, or a uterine rupture in a non-cesarean mother. Cytotec, Cervidil. These are things that are meant to assist in crazy situations, medically necessary situations, not as a norm. I know that there's a hospital and a provider around here still using Cytotec. Cytotec is something that can cause, again, just by a single pill, uterine rupture in a non-cesarean woman. It does have its place, not as the norm. Yeah. Okay. Try provision a different variety of moves. Continue your water and fluid intake, and ask for time. You have that right to be like, no, you can come back in another 6 hours, because ICAN states that failures progress is after 6 hours or longer, because your body's still progressing regardless. So just know that your body's not failing you. It's just your variation of normal. If you have a cesarean birth, know that you're not alone. Know that we are there for you. Know that other women have been in your shoes. Know that there does not have to be a dark moment. And know that you do not have to have another cesarean just as a normalcy. You have the right. You also have the right to mourn your birth while celebrating your baby. We are told as a nation that we need to be strong and postpartum depression doesn't exist, and that we just have to be happy that our baby is healthy. Bull. I was so happy my daughter was healthy, but I was pissed off from what happened. That was not okay. And I know that I was not alone, though I felt it when it happened. I felt I was by myself. I felt that I failed. And it took me a long time to realize that you can't fail birth. You get through it, and you get through it with community support. You have choices. You can either birth vaginally after cesarean, have a repeat cesarean. Now this is different than a cesarean birth after cesarean by terminology. A repeat cesarean is a planned cesarean. For VBACs, your chances are lowered for maternal morbidity. Faster and easier recovery, increased bonding. You have better chances for baby to have a healthier start by gut fluorization. It allows for stronger immunity, and it does increase bonding with breastfeeding and bonding with its nature. Now, but do the risks outweigh? Really? 0.5% is the actual percentage rate of uterine rupture. Of 0.5%, only 6% of that minute number is catastrophic. When we hear women say you have a 13% chance, you have a 40% chance, you have a 80% chance of uterine rupture, that is non-evidence and uninformed and unsolicited advice. Tell them to read a book. It's not something you need to hear because it's not true. ACOG started calling any degree of opening a rupture, which is where some of the spark and changes have occurred. So basically, you are first-time mom. And if you think about it, for a 0.5 chance, that's 99.5 chance that no rupture will happen. That includes a window, a distension, whatever. And sometimes we don't even know that you have had anything because it repairs itself. So most likely, you're going to have a normal pregnancy and a normal birth. What can help increase that chance of rupture is when you go in with induction and any form of intervention. However, intervention does have its place, even in VBAC. So these are the VBAC numbers by location. This is on our ICAN page, so you can always reference. But basically, Tampa General has one of the highest rates of VBAC. And you can see as it goes through, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And St. Joseph's, this 0.4%, I've heard lately that a lot of people are trying to go to St. Joe's for a VBAC. This is called a bait and switch. It happens very often in our community and around the entire country. Try not to get sucked in. If you think that your provider is trying something, contact us. We can help you find the right resources and the right information so that you can go back and be prepared and educated to address your provider. There are options in Tampa Bay. We have a list on our ICAN website of providers that support VBAC. These are also fantastic providers that support natural birth as itself. So you can check it out there. And I wanted to share a little bit about my story. My daughter I didn't know she was a girl, and I was planning a birth center birth, and I was hell-bent and determined that my baby was going to come out, and I was just going to be like this birth goddess, and I was like, yeah, natural birth? Don't talk to me about an epidural, okay? And I got a rude awakening when my water broke, and nothing happened after. And later I found out that my water broke because I had a vaginal exam earlier that day. There was an unconsented intervention that occurred that through telling stories, I came to the conclusion of, and with my records. So after I was transferred out from the birth center for failure to start labor at 18 hours, which isn't even the recommended time, it's 24, I was forced by fear and by a provider in a hospital yelling at my husband and I that we had to have a Pitocin induction and that why would I try the risk of killing my baby otherwise. My husband then got very verbal in tears and they gave us a moment to be conceded. My labor had already started. I went for 13 hours on Pitocin without an epidural, and they kept forcing any form of intervention for pain relief. I finally went through with it and came out a couple hours later fully dilated. Pushed for 3.5 hours, went back for an emergency cesarean an hour later. And my baby was posterior. I will not get into what happened in the OR itself due to some women having post-traumatic stress to begin with, but it did a big number on me. No woman should be treated that way. When I found out I was pregnant again, I'd already started my healing journey. I was already involved with ICAN. I knew what I wanted and I knew what my body was capable of. Did I have doubts? Of course, because birth was unpredictable. But I knew the strength within myself, and I knew that if I had to have a cesarean, I knew better this time what I wanted from a cesarean. No one knew my due date, so people thought I was early, but I was actually 40 weeks. And I woke up after nursing my daughter to a huge contraction and a large pop. And I was like, whoa, get off. Went to the bathroom and my water broke. Way more than it did the first time around. I got a little nervous, but but realized that I had been having contractions prior. And called my midwife and was like, hey, how's it going? I think I'm in labor, and I'm pretty sure I'm in labor. But no rush, because it just happened, and well, I'll call you later. Oh, okay. She had an appointment with me at 11 o'clock anyway, so we were good. Sent my husband to the store, and I was like, hey, we haven't got anything for the smoothies. Please go. Take our daughter. As soon as they left, bam. I was on the floor, rocking. I was like, oh my goodness, where did this all come from? I crawled over to the phone and was like, hey, you need to come back now. And he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I feel pushy. He screamed in the middle of Publix, pushy? What? I didn't check out yet. And so he rushed home. By the time he got home, I fully undressed. After I called my midwife, I was like, I think it's time. Luckily, she was up the street at another appointment. And my doula, who's also the birth assistant, they got there. Well, let's start this. My husband walks in and he hears me from outside. I was praying that CPS wasn't going to get called. And I had fully disrobed, got on my bed, put the chucks on, and was like, yeah, all right, woo, I'm on all fours, let it go. And I was actually singing Frozen, thank you very much. I was listening out my window for a car. I don't care whose car it was. First my husband came home and was like, honey, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not deaf. Don't scream. Like, go away. And then I heard my midwife. They got enough time just to start to fill up the birth tub. Put a little bit of water and was like, I'm getting in. I don't care. Got in the tub. The birth assistant and the doula finally showed up. And this is all within an hour of me calling. And my midwife's trunk was still wide open, like nothing, no doors were shut. It was just, get them and go. And started pushing, was just hanging in there. My daughter was there. She was playing behind me. I have these lovely pictures of her just grabbing my little birth goddesses and playing. I didn't know she was there. But it didn't scare her because it was normal for her. We had done lots of preparation. He was almost 10 pounds. He was 9 pounds, 12 ounces, and 23 inches long. My daughter was 8 pounds, 4 ounces, and 21. And I was told by record that I could not have a baby over 8 pounds because of CPD. Well, I had my linebacker, and I had him in 4.5 hours. And I am so grateful for the community and for the information and resources that I found to be able to do this, which is why I talk about cesarean and VBAC. You have the ability to birth however you choose. Know that. Whether that's a vaginal birth, a cesarean birth, top of Mount Everest, over in the waters, it's your choice. Know that there's support for you. Thank you.